You on the line with us, progressive independent journalist Jordan Chariton. He's typically reporting on political corruption, environmental contamination, and the disappearing middle class over at his website, jordanchariton.com. You can tweet him at Jordan Chariton. Jordan, welcome back to the program. You're reporting from Flint, Michigan all this week?
I am.
So tell us what's going on there.
Yeah, I've been working on a major piece that I published yesterday that really dissects the actual testing of the water here in Flint over the last 2 years. Very recently, an EPA-funded scientist declared that the water was meeting federal standards, and the state of Michigan has declared that the water is now, quote, restored. And this is what allowed Governor Snyder to shut down the water pods in Flint several weeks ago, citing this data. So I just published a piece that basically shows, as far as I can tell, that the science has some serious holes in it. And there's very, very cherry-picked testing and flawed testing that's gone on here to declare the water safe. So I'm speaking with residents, plumbers, politicians here this week about that reporting.
What kind of, I know you can play games with whether or not you allow water to run before you test it or how long you let it run, things like that. I mean, in what ways are they gaming the system or scamming the residents of Flint in order to be able to avoid the cost of passing out bottled water, basically?
Yeah, so basically there was two different tests. You had an EPA-funded scientist by the name of Mark Edwards, as well as the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. Edwards actually declared the water, normal and meeting federal regulations by testing literally 34 homes. He cited 34 homes in a city of nearly 40,000, saying I met EPA regulations. He also, as part of the EPA's
were those 34 homes clustered in an area that was low risk, or were they randomly scattered throughout the city?
Randomly scattered throughout the city.
Well, that might not be unreasonable. I mean, you do small samples to project large trends. I mean, that's how exit polling works, for example.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with it. First, to meet the EPA's lead and copper rule, you actually have to be testing. Over half of your sample size has to be from homes connected to lead service lines. Obviously, lead is going to leach from lead service lines mostly. Right. There's no verification that these homes are even lead. I have them on the record basically saying that's a problem with the lead and copper rule. We don't know. The second part of that is Edwards, as well as the state, used old records that were literally written on index cards to surmise that the homes they were testing were actually connected to lead service lines. These records, 11 to 15,000 homes, were missing. I have the director of this study literally on the record telling me, yeah, I mean, the study was very flawed because records were missing. A lot of the homes had to be thrown out because it was unreadable on the index cards what service line they had, whether it was lead, whether it was copper. You also had the state. The state was really cherry picking where they were testing homes. The two zip codes with the highest lead level content found was barely had homes tested. So basically, this is a story not just about Flint, but about the inadequate EPA regulations in the first place that are allowing this small sample size, imperfect records to be used to declare, a city like Flint that had this man-made disaster now safe for drinking water.
Remarkable. So is there going to be any pushback, or, has this become political? What's happening in Flint, right now?
Yeah, so residents have been, really fighting back because they're being told, the water is safe. But meanwhile, residents I'm talking to and interviewing have ongoing health problems that are new. They're showering and bathing and having stinging in their eyes, ongoing rashes. You have ongoing autoimmune issues, cancers, kidney, liver. You're also having, stacks and stacks of medical bills. So the residents have been saying you cannot shut down these water pods until all the lead service lines are replaced in the city. But the governor, citing this data that my story is about, said, well, our EPA testing shows that the water is now back to normal levels, so I'm shutting down the water pods. So you have residents, through the city council, they're trying to get the water pods reopened. They're trying to get more thorough testing because it's not just a lead problem. They have found really alarming levels of bacteria here in Flint, and bacteria causing all sorts of health illnesses. So the residents are fighting back. Unfortunately, this governor, Rick Snyder, who obviously, oversaw this really big disaster, has been doing everything possible to essentially skirt responsibility for paying for water bottles, things like that. So it's really residents fighting back more than actual politicians.
Are there any specific organizations? I mean, if somebody listening or watching this program right now were to want to go to a website and, sign a petition or kick in $15 or whatever, what do they do?
Yeah, Flint Rising is an organization I've interviewed a few times. Residents from Flint, they have been doing grassroots organizing here, organizing protests, definitely organizing water donations. I think their website is flintrising.com, if I'm mistaken. There's also donations coming in now to churches. I believe the Court Street Church here in Flint for water since Snyder shut down the water pods.
Right.
There are organizations helping, but really the most important thing is people need to get informed because, I hear what you're saying as far as, well, small sample sizes are used all the time, but for a disaster like Flint, looking at that few homes, also really relying on really shoddy records of where the lead service lines even are. They just found last week that there's 14,000 lead service lines still in the ground. That's 15% more than was projected.
Wow.
So really, there's a lot of problems here as far as, basically the science, they're using this one-size-fits-all EPA regulation, but the city has way more lead service lines than were thought, and we're still seeing, I've counted over 150 in the last 6 months, elevated lead samples coming back across the city. There's also a staggering level of homes that were last tested in 2016 or 2017. They had hundreds of parts per billion over the EPA level, which is 15 parts per billion is the allowable limit. The homes that had hundreds of parts over were never retested. I spoke with a gentleman. He had 11,000 parts per billion of lead in his home. They never went back to retest it. And that's all across the city. There's homes like that. So I think it's really premature to declare the water restored. I have Aaron Brockovich in the story, Congressman Dan Kildee, who represents Flint, basically questioning the science because it's really hard to believe that you could declare the water safe here when there's so few homes that have been tested. And like I said, the records are very suspect.
Amazing. Jordan Chariton, progressive independent journalist. Jordan Chariton, CHARITON.com is the website, and the Twitter handle as well is Jordan Chariton. Jordan, thanks.
Yeah, and I'll be here all week, youtube.com/Jordan Chariton Reports.
You got it. We'll be back.
Thanks.